Hey everyone, welcome to Talks of Thailand. My name is Jon. Today's story is about a man who found himself in a very precarious position when he was in Thailand, and it caused him to have to make a very difficult decision. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give the video a like, and let's get in to today's story. If I could have my time all over again, to be honest, I wouldn't change much. There are a few things I would change though. I'm an old man now, reminiscing about the past. Something that I like to do on a daily basis, and I suppose lots of us do that when we get on in years, just thinking about what life used to be like and the things we did, the exciting times we had and the bad times we had, wondering what we would change if we could do it again. I'd got to the point in life now where I can honestly say, if I look at 100 things that I did, I might change 10 of them. I would definitely change one of them, and that's the biggest thing of all. You can make lots of mistakes in your life, yet only one mistake can outweigh all the others. And of course, mine is to do with Thailand and what happened to me in Thailand. The twisted turn of events that caused me to be in the position I'm in today, and in some way that made me who I am today as well. I'm lucky in the sense that I wasn't completely annihilated by my time in Thailand, and I believe I could be a story that some people could point to say that, while everything can go wrong, you can still make sure that it doesn't actually define your life from that moment, and you can take it for what it was and try and use it to your advantage. I don't really know. It's quite hard to think about, quite hard to talk about, because it's a life trying to be boiled down into a very short amount of time, and I appreciate the ability to be able to share my story because it gives me more time than ever to reminisce. I want to begin by talking about Thailand and why I went to Thailand. And I went to Thailand a very, very long time ago. My old man was posted to Thailand with his work in the 70s. I was not even out of school yet. I was still in junior school at home, and we went to Thailand for him to do this job in the 70s. You have to imagine what it must have been like for a young boy, just under 10 years old, arriving in this exotic location, so alien to anything he'd seen before. Although my old man used to work in India when I was younger, I don't remember any of that. I do remember the first scenes in Thailand though. There were no high-rises back then, no BTS, no SkyTrain, no anything. It was just this city that was raw, it was energetic, it was palpable in a way that filled me with this sense of excitement and wonder, and shaped who I was in my life. For the 5 years that we lived there, I picked up bits of Thai, although I went to an international school and I didn't really pay much attention, which is something that I would regret later on in life. What I kept coming back to was that the world wasn't as big as it actually was. Many people didn't do lots of travelling in the 70s, and even before that. Many people didn't go and work overseas, and those that did it in a way unlike they do today. People were a lot less connected than they were before. Things were just completely different, and I suppose for us at the time, it was all modern and exciting and new. When I returned back to England from Cambridgeshire, where I originated, and went to school there, went to a reasonable private school, even though you were mixing with people from a similar kind of guild as you, they weren't able to picture and imagine the bigger world out there, because when you're reading a book and seeing a couple of illustrations in the book, and a few black and white pictures or colour pictures, I suppose, not really as vibrant as you see today, you are able to open up the imagination to think about what it's going to be like. Yet, you can't actually understand without being there. And I believe that gave me something very unique in the front of my mind that allowed me to see the bigger picture in the world from a very young age, and I took full advantage of that. We arrived back home, it was the 1980s, and Thailand kind of faded away. It was always there though. Then I had a couple of siblings who were a lot younger than me, which kind of shifted the family dynamic, and well, that was when I went into a bit of a bender, for a lack of a better term, became like the black sheep in the family. Maybe it was that they preferred my younger brother-sister over me, I don't know. But by the time I was 18, this time already out of private school, already left school at 16, coming to terms with the fact that your family is disowning you in a way, and I must have been not the best kid and the not best kind of guy, but perhaps I was too self-righteous in a way. Perhaps I was too focused on who I was and what I wanted, and believing that I deserved it, because that's what my family was able to give for themselves. I don't really know what it was, but at 18, after already being out of school for 2 years, I did have the foresight to purchase a house. Although at the time it wasn't a foresight, was it? It was just normal. You could buy a house very, very easily, and I was living with my girlfriend at the time, not really knowing where life was going to take me, still of the understanding that the world was indeed smaller than many people believed it was. I guess we could get the next 10 years out of the way straight away, all the way up until 1990. I'm 30, I'm already started a business, was already doing reasonably well financially, married, 1 kid, turned a couple of years old at this point. We're just having a great family existence, and it was around this time that we went to Thailand as a family unit, my wife and I and our son, who was a couple of years old. How Thailand had come on since then, since the first time, was quite remarkable. It was developing at a huge pace of knots, yet it was still the Orient, it was still the East, it was still alive in your mind to the way that you pictured it being. We had a great time, and rekindled my love of Thailand in a way that I just felt this deep affinity to the place, based on the childhood experiences and the childhood knowledge of what it was like. At this point, I'm not speaking to my family. I hadn't spoken to them since, and that was something I regret. I suppose one of the things I would change, I would have been a better son, but that's something you can't change now because they're all long gone. I want to fast forward yet another 10 years. This time I'm approaching 40. I were in the 2000s, and the inevitable happened for me in terms of a divorce. She got custody of my son. She was cheating on me multiple times with lots of different guys because I was too busy working, apparently, and I didn't spend enough time with her, though she was prepared to live off the luxury that I was giving her, although it wasn't luxury in the sense of what you might picture luxury being. It was a good life, though. That sent me into a huge depression, a huge, negative, awful situation, and I wasn't able to work or function around this time. Naturally, I decided to go to Thailand and rekindle yet again that kind of my life from before. Being twice in different times of the near country's history and arriving in the early 2000s was different yet again. It still had the Thailand of old feel to it, with new bits planted on the ground. You still had the Thailand feeling, that really unique Thailand sense of wonder, yet you had more modern features being built, bigger buildings, taller buildings, this expat scene that was varied and commemorative of the times that I'd been there in the past. Immediately, this must have been 2002, but immediately I felt at home in Thailand. I felt like the problems I was facing at home, thanks to my marriage breaking down, were non-existent in Thailand. It felt like it was such a minor thing that had happened to me when you're seeing the bigger picture of life in Thailand, and I clung to that, and I decided that I would retire early and live there. This was when I was there. I had been there probably only a week in total, and I was going to retire at 40 years old. Couple of $100,000 saved up thanks to the divorce, and it was only a couple of hundred, not a lot more hundreds on top. Back then, though, that was a lot of money. A huge exchange rate difference to today, a huge price difference to today. 300,000, which is exactly what I had, was 20-odd million baht, a lot of money in Thailand. I touched down, probably after spending 6 months at home, just getting my affairs in order. I arrived in Thailand 2003 with 20 million baht, and I transferred all my money to Thailand. I was dead set that that was the right idea, and fortuitously, it was the right idea because of what happened with the exchange rates. I've heard guys talk about they wished they did that, and how they were told at the time that they should keep their money in their own country. Yet, I got 20 million baht just over, in fact. Yet, I blew through a bit of it and ended up with 20 million back in 2003, when I was considered set up in a nice rental unit. One of the old, kind of expat-style units that were big 3-bedroom places around Nana, that were there to house the country's expat population. That is what needed them to be, which was where my dad was posted for the time he was working there. They didn't have the local population to be able to do the kinds of things he did. It wasn't a skill that they had, and I suppose, on the one hand, I pointed to that fact as being that in a way Thailand owed so much to people like us before we'd helped them build their country to what it was, yet there was not really that shared love and respect there. I suppose that's the thing, and that's something, and I know, and we have spoken at length about this over the past couple of weeks. I know you feel the same kind of thing to me, just I kind of point to the fact that I'd witnessed and experienced somebody in my family giving so much to Thailand, yet Thailand not giving anything in return. Again, it's their country to do as they please. I haven't talked about the bar scene yet and the nightlife scene, because that's by the by, isn't it? That's Thailand. I was just enjoying that side of things. I was enjoying going to the beach all the time. I was enjoying mixing with other expats all the time. And I was just enjoying my life. I had more than enough money to see me out based on how much stuff cost and based on how much baht I had. I didn't get much in terms of interest though in Thailand. One thing I always found quite strange, you could have a decent interest rate at home or a decent interest rate in different countries, But in Thailand, they never seemed to offer good interest in the bank, and the mortgage rates and the loan rates were really high, and what they gave in return was so low, and they just seemed to be able to get away with it. So it's not like I was getting a big income coming in from my funds, but there was a little bit of something coming in. It was around 2004. I had met a few girls at this point who I did like, not love, just like. 2004, I met this girl who, I don't know what it was about her, and I didn't meet her in a bar. I was loving the bars, but I didn't meet her in one. I met her in this expat club that I was part of. She was the lady that worked, I don't know what word you'd use to describe it, kind of like checking people in when you'd go and attend this event, and I kind of started talking to her and we hit it off, I suppose would be the word you would use. I wasn't looking for anything serious when I'd arrived in Thailand, thanks to my marriage completely collapsing around me and the depression that brought on from losing custody of my son, who I didn't see for a long time since then. But we did kind of hit it off. I think everyone, or every guy that is, at least one of them I've spoken to, and a few of them I've spoken to, kind of get a bigger sense of confidence when they arrive in Thailand. They kind of become somebody a bit more open than they would have been. But I can just remember arriving at this event, and they take your bags from you and help out, and you get set up. It was really like an old school sort of thing, which has pretty much died out since then, but I handed over my bag, and started talking. She wasn't paid a lot of money, it didn't appear, and she wasn't in the upper echelons of Thai society. But I can remember remarking something, and then after that, went back after the event to go and collect my bag, and remarked something again, and just sort of said to her, would you like to go out for a drink or something to eat? And she just said yes, very forward of me. It was very forward, and I wasn't a forward individual up until then, but in Thailand I was, and I could be, and we went out. This place was around the Siam area of Bangkok, which I didn't really like that part of Bangkok. I didn't like how all the land around there belonged to, are you even allowed to say, the royal family? I think you are. All the land belonged to the royal family, and they had this huge house in the Siam area, which, when the SkyTrain was built, they kind of blocked it off, and you couldn't see when you're going past, and you walk past it, and you've got like the old Thailand. Yet I didn't like it because I felt like you couldn't be part of it. I couldn't have something like that because I wasn't Thai and I couldn't own land, and I couldn't afford it anyway. It was like little bits of Thailand. The bits that you liked were out of reach. I think that was the thing. That was really the thing. The things I liked about Thailand the most, the historical side of it, I would always respected it, and I always respected the royal family. I still do. I really respect the royal family in Thailand, but I couldn't become part of it. Not the family itself. That was obviously just not going to happen to anyone, even if you were Thai. But you couldn't become part of the fabric around it, and that's something that I wish could be changed. But we left Siam together, and the condo I was renting was in Nana. I didn't want to take her to Nana. I didn't know what kind of girl she was, so we went in the other direction. Went down the SkyTrain where it is now, wasn't there at the time. I don't believe it was, or it could have been. Maybe it was. That's how my memory is going. We ended up in a place called RE, which I'm quite saddened about what that place has become today. It's, again, a lot more modern and hip and trendy kind of places that the Bangkok children elites will go to and kind of behave like Westerners in Thailand, yet not Westerners behaving like Westerners because they're not Western, yet they want to be like that. It just seems to be very hypocritical. Again, as I've spoken to you about at length, we just seem to share the same kind of ideas, so I appreciate you lending an ear to me and, sharing this story. But we ended up in this small, nondescript Thai-style place, and I was early 40s, decent money. She was mid-20s, no money, and it wasn't like she was the most beautiful girl I'd ever met, but it was effortless talking to her, and I find we have a couple of drinks together, and we had a plate of khao man gai each. One of those sorts of places, buying the drinks from 7-Eleven to drink in there because they didn't sell them. And I can remember that it was like yesterday, and we spent a couple of hours together. Went away to have something to drink somewhere else. Again, not at a fancy place, not at a fancy bar like they have around RE today. It was a lot more normal Thai style, real Thai pricing. I suppose whether it was that she didn't have lots to drink often or that she liked me, I don't know. Perhaps pick up on the fact that she was really drunk. I don't think I was drunk too, but she ended up kind of saying, well, I'm tired, where's your condo? So we went back to my condo, and I guess that's when I become hooked on her, and she on me, probably for very, very different reasons, because I lived in this 3-bedroom place. It wasn't that expensive though. Again, a typical sort of expat place that was built up in the 80s, I believe, and it was one of the best places on the street. Now, it's one of the worst. Bigger though. You're not going to get that sort of big unit in newer buildings for anything really, because they just don't build them of that size anymore. And again, that's beside the point. But we had a great time together. I gave her my phone number and she gave me hers, and I said to her, call me. I wanted it to be up to her to call me. I didn't want to force anything because I did have feelings for her and I wanted to see her again, but not where I wanted to be look like I was desperate or anything. Next couple of days, though, I'm not really thinking about her anymore, although occasionally I do think from time to time. I actually made it down to the beach, just went to a beautiful island, then time by myself, and I was on my second day there, probably 5 days after seeing her first, and my phone rings and I don't recognise the number, and it was her. I had her phone number saved in my phone, so why didn't I recognise it? But she said she lost her phone or something like that, doesn't matter, and she wants to see me again. I thought she wanted to see me tonight, she said, and I looked around and thought I could make it back to Bangkok, should I or shouldn't I? So I thought I would, I can make it back. So I quickly booked a speedboat, got from Koh Samet back to Rayong and then a taxi up, and I'm seeing her that evening. It was then when she was opening up a lot more about her life. She was working at the hotel. It was a hotel where the Expat event was, and of course I knew then, but at the time I guess I thought she just worked for this event, but it turned out she worked for the hotel. She's working in the reservation department, something along those lines. I didn't really pay much attention to it because when I found out that she was only earning, I think it was about 8,000 baht a month, and again I remember thinking 8,000 a month and she's working a job that was, 110 quid. She was earning 110 quid a month. Again, how Thailand has changed since then, because now, if that same kind of salary might be 18,000 a month, then how much is that in quid? Maybe 400 quid. So she's more than 4 times her salary, as a Thai person earns, in pound terms since the early 2000s, and English people are not making 4 times the salary, even in the slightest. They're not even making double. So that's sort of where things have shifted since then, and again, that's one thing that you've referenced yourself, and I kind of appreciate being able to discuss it with people who think the same way. Someone like her has got wealthier to the tune of 4 or 5 times, whereas we've got wealthier to the tune of maybe 20%. So I suppose that's the dynamic shift. I'm finding out all these things. I'm thinking this is not a lot of money at all. I'd met other girls who had, I knew they didn't make a lot of money, but I didn't know, exactly how much they made. But the fact that she told me and what it was quite shocking. I found her, though, to be a very warm individual. She was so open about who she was, where she was from, what she wanted with her life, and it marked what I wanted with my life. It was a match. Let's see if we can find something genuine between us. That's what we were thinking. Let's see if we can be together in a way. And I was really open to being with her because I felt things for her that I hadn't felt since I got married the first time. Nothing like the girls I'd met in the bars, which was just for a bit of fun. Before long, we had that conversation that many guys tend to have when they meet a girl in Thailand. How about if you stop working and I'll give you some money instead? I'll give you 8,000 a month. You don't need to work. It was basically like nothing a month back then. It really was like nothing a month. And okay, people will say don't give financial support to your partner, but why not? When I was working, when I had my first wife, she didn't work, and she took so much more from me than any Thai girl ever did. So don't ever do that. Why not though? It was 110 quid a month. She was grateful for that. Lots of that went to her family, and she was from a place called Nakhon Sawan, which isn't in Isan. It's about 2.5 hours north of Bangkok, a little village out from there. Corn family, the whole family were. They had a corn farm, just only a small bit of land, and we just kind of got on in a way that felt right. This is 2004, so it's a long time ago now, and I would say it was about a whole year of being together, falling more in love with her and her with me. I suppose that's how I felt. I mean, I did at the time, and I believed it was a kind of mutual love and respect between us. About a year had gone by, though, and that was when we actually committed to each other and got married, which was 2005. That was when I went up with her to Nakhon Sawan, and I have been to Isan in my life. I've been into Thailand, yet I've been to Isan a few times, so I can sort of describe it and compare it to Nakhon Sawan, and I would say it is reasonably similar. I found that Nakhon Sawan, at least the town, was similar to certain areas of Bangkok that foreigners don't go to, yet a lot smaller. That was the word I would use to describe it. The village itself, though, was quite remote. They'd just paved the road when we got there that ran up to the family's house. They'd just paved it. It was flat as far as the eye could see, but it was situated with a few, what she called, mountains, which were just like not really mountains at all. They were like large hills that protruded out of the landscape, and the family's house was right next to one of these big mountains that, let's call them that for the sake of it. That's what she said they were called. At least her mother and father, I believe, had about 5 rai of land, and it was just the most beautiful idyllic setting I'd ever seen. Not that I was ever planning to live there, so let me get that straight off the way. We kind of did the Thai ceremony. I paid some money, just so be it. That's just something you did in Thailand, and I suppose some guys didn't, but I did. It wasn't a lot of money though. It was about 50,000 baht, and that included how much the wedding cost. And remember back then, things were just so much cheaper. Now that we're married, 2005, probably at this point, you've been there, you know, reasonable while I still have about it, but I'm thinking about my money, I'm still about 20 million baht left. I was earning a bit of interest that was coming in, and even though it wasn't a lot in terms of percentage-wise, it was still covering most of what I was spending. I didn't spend a lot of money in terms of a day-to-day life. We do go to nice restaurants, and nice restaurants were cheap though. So if you had 400,000 baht a year, which is probably what I was getting in interest, you could probably live on that for most of what you want. Life is great, life is wonderful, and life is everything that you want your life to be in early retirement. I suppose after we got married and went away together, we went to India. I wanted to go there. She didn't want to go there, but it was a compromise. Go to India and then we can go somewhere in Thailand of her choosing when we get back. And I wanted to go to India because I hadn't been since I was a young boy, and I couldn't even remember my time there. In a way, it was a huge anticlimax for me because it wasn't like the India that I pictured. I pictured India as the India of old, not the India of new. And again, I appreciate you having candid conversations with me about this because it's just not the same, is it? It's not the same. I'm an old man, and I've got lots of years on you, but I mean, it was a bit of an anticlimax. Still great, though, in Calcutta, which is where we rent. Not somewhere I would go back to. Back in Thailand, we went to the place that she wanted to go, which was Phuket. I'd never been to the beach in that part of Thailand before. I'd only been further up north, and it was quite nice. I'd never taken her anywhere, really, since we'd met. We kind of just staying around Bangkok and doing that side of things. But we went to Phuket together, and she seemed to really like it, and I liked it too. Again, 2005, not full of how you would describe it, I suppose. It wasn't full of people from other countries that had ripped the fabric away of it. We started discussing the possibility of leaving Bangkok and renting a different place. We were still renting the same condo I'd always been in. New buildings were coming up all the time at this point, and they were coming up at places that you never thought condos would come up in. Should we move somewhere like Phuket, or should we stay in Bangkok? Fast forward 2 years, probably 2007, we'd lived in Phuket for a year, and I want to get this bit out of the way quickly. Didn't really get on with living there, and decided to move back to Bangkok. It was when we moved back to Bangkok that instead of looking for somewhere to rent, we both decided that we should buy somewhere. There were new buildings coming up. We wanted somewhere similar to the place I rented before, just the one that belonged to like one owner though. They owned the whole building, the one I rented before, and they didn't really have units available like that, at least within the price range I was looking at. I was thinking around 3 to 4 million baht, which at the time was about 50 to 60 grand. It wasn't a lot of money in that sense. Let's buy somewhere to live and put down a couple of firmer roots in the country and have something that we can call our own and we can decorate our own way. We wanted to be able to build the kitchen exactly like we wanted it, the bedroom exactly like we wanted it, and the bathroom just the same. I think it was that we'd been together a couple of years at this point too, and everything seemed to be going so well that it was only the next logical step was to spend about 3 to 4 million on a nice place and get it to our standards and to our liking. Still would have a lot of money left and still would be able to live a great life, so let's go for it. We spent a lot of time looking, mainly around Nana, Anasok and Prompong, and whatever reason it was, I always wanted to live in Nana. It just felt like the expat central to me from even remembering back to the day I was there as a child. People went out, they went to Nana, that was it. That was expat central. So I was a bit hesitant when we saw this great unit in Prompong. It seemed to be a bit too far away. I mean, the SkyTrain was there, it's only 2 stations, and 2 stations isn't a lot. So ultimately we decided to buy it. It was 4 million baht. Decent size, a bit of a walk from the SkyTrain, but it seemed like it would be good and a decent place to live. The only issue was that the foreign quota was already full. It was whatever percent, I don't remember, but it was a very popular place with people from Japan in that area, and that didn't bother me. I had a couple of friends from Japan, in fact, not close friends, but people from a similar kind of background in Japan than I was from at home, and we kind of understood and had similar kinds of expectations about things. It wasn't anything that I had a problem with them in any way, shape, because I really got on with them. But it was an issue in terms of the foreign quota. We could buy it in my wife's name, and we could get it done up, and we could get it to a position where we can live in it, including the renovations. I think we ended up spending 5 million baht, so you can guess it went into her name. It was worth it, though, in terms of the unit size, I thought. Moving in, again, probably around 2008, I think it was a really remarkable experience, because I felt this connection to Thailand because I was married to her. Just now I had a different connection because we had a property there, and it was a wonderful situation to be in. Then we had the financial crisis around this time, and that was when the baht started to strengthen against the pound, and I'm looking at my baht thinking, I'm actually going to be up in pound terms if this continues. That was one of the strange things that was happening over the course of time. Okay, I transferred in about 300 grand to Thailand and now we bought this condo. And in pound terms, I still had quite close to that same amount that I transferred in, and it was strange. And we got a condo out of it. Remarkable to think about just how a bit of negative pound kind of news was ruining the expat lifestyle for newcomers, yet I was in on the old pound terms. It was quite understandable that I was happy about it. Again, I just have to keep pointing to this. I understand you have similar feelings. We've spoken at length about it, and it's interesting in a way. It's also not interesting, because on the one hand, I'm better off in pound terms, but on the other hand, I'm worse off because the expat scene is shifting. The country is developing at this huge rate of knots, and what it means to be an expat is changing. I think that was happening around 2008. We're living there in that same year. Everything seems to be great, and everything seems to be going according to plan. We were happy with each other, never really had any big arguments, never falling out about anything, and she's just the embodiment of what I want in a wife. Spend a bit of time with her family every now and then and managing to rough it out. They had a 2-story house, which was pretty typical for that sort of place in Thailand, yet they didn't have any insulation upstairs. It was red hot, and if you've ever experienced hot in your life, you've got nothing on what it's like trying to sleep in the upstairs of a wooden house in Thailand in the middle of summer. Huge humidity, huge heat in the upstairs place, and it's very difficult to do. But, you don't mind a couple of days of it, do you? It was after we arrived back from visiting the family that we were in the condo. A couple of days later, there's a knock on the door. This Japanese guy, who was our neighbour, is saying that he's looking to buy another condo in the building and he wants the one next to his. Would we be open to selling? Initially, I said no, not really. We were 5 million baht in it. And he said, what about if I pay you? I think he said 5.5 million. I said no, I'm not interested. It's not worth the hassle for 500 baht profit on top. He kept going though, and when he offered 6 million, and I thought to myself, is he serious? Or is he not? This wasn't just a there and then, it was over the course of a couple of weeks, speaking with him, seeing him by the pool, that sort of thing. And it was an ongoing discussion, and I said to my wife, and we're looking around at other condos available at this point, we could buy something, and we could probably make a bit of money off this one, and get a new condo in a different place, and this might actually make us some money. On the one hand, that was a great thing to think about, because we did end up selling it, and ended up making about 1 million baht profit, and ended up looking for another condo and doing an even bigger renovation on the next one, because that was one of the older buildings in the areas. That one we spent 5 million baht on, and we'd made 1 million baht profit. It was amazing though, it was wonderful to think about. It also brought on what became another issue later, which was, we've already, enjoyed doing this renovation. It was something that I had fun doing, and watching the workmen, helping them and, telling them what I wanted, seeing it progress and how you designed it and how you want it to be, and it's changing around into something great. We decided that why don't we, after we've done our place, the new one we bought, why don't we find another one, buy that and renovate it, then flip it and make some money. That was what we kept coming back to as being a great idea. Put it on the back burner for the time being, as we found the other place and renovated that one, and sort this out. It could be a fun thing to do, not necessarily because we needed the money, but just as a project where we could make more on top. Again, we put about 5 million into the one that we bought, and if anything, it was better than the first one. We kept being excited about the prospect. I've got all this money sitting in the bank. That's capital that can be used to actually build something great. Why don't we look for another condo and try and sell it? If I think about any time when my wife perhaps was getting a little bit big-headed, I believe it was. Obviously, this one went into her name, and therefore technically the profit was hers. But I believe she's starting to believe that she's above herself. She's trying to be beyond her station in life. She's trying to elevate her status and elevate who she is, and elevate her abilities to be beyond what they actually are. That's what I'm thinking about if I have to, and think about as time's gone by. While I always thought it was us doing things together, I believe originally she thought that too. As we were looking for this second condo to buy, which we would be able to renovate and make a profit on, I suppose that's what we were hoping, I believe in her mind it started to shift from being us to being her. Whereas before, I was the one who would call the agent and they spoke English, and I was the one who could find the workman. My Thai was reasonable at this time, and I could deal with the workman. Now it was her wanting to do it all. Initially, I thought that was just her showing interest and enthusiasm and a kind of fascination into what we were doing. But, as I think about it now, it was her wanting to take control and eventually push me out. I think that's what her intentions were, but at the time, I had no idea that that's what her intentions were, because why would I think that? Like I said, we did find this second condo, which was actually in a completely different place. It was close to the river, the Chao Phraya River. I didn't really know much about that area. I didn't spend much time there. But based on the research that we did and the knowledge about what it was like around there and the interest to a certain sort of expat, we pulled the trigger, spending a bit more money. It was about 5 million plus the renovation on top. It needed a big renovation, although the foreign quota was available. When I actually went to go and speak to my lawyer friend who was doing the work for us, that was the stumbling block. You transferred the money into Thailand a long time ago. Do you have any record of that? I didn't, because of course, you've got to transfer the money into the country to buy the condo, into the foreign quota. While I could have sort of shifted something around and worked something out, and perhaps gone to the bank and asked them to look at the old transfers and do something to make this possible, it just seemed to be a lot more straightforward to buy this one in her name, which we ended up doing. So fast forward 6 months or so until that was ready. And although it was 5 million baht, we probably spent maybe, I would say 3 million baht on it all in on that condo, which was a huge lot of money to spend, but it was a picture perfect place. We put it up for sale for 9 million, and there were units in that building for that price, and it wasn't a quick sell. I'm not going to say it went fantastically because it didn't. It wasn't quick, and I was starting to have second thoughts, starting to think, should we try to rent it out for an income? I wasn't too overly concerned though, because I still had a big amount of money left. You've got to remember now, my money's going up in pound terms because of the exchange rate, so I'm always looking, and if things got worse, but it's got better on one front instead to make it up. Eventually though, it sold, and we got 8.8 million for it, made 800 baht profit, minus the transfer fees that was on top. So probably all in it was 600,000 profit, which wasn't too bad, and it was a fun thing to do. It was an enjoyable experience, and I was really liking doing it. At this point, we'd bought another place that we were living in, and now this was the one we shifted. So it was kind of up in the air here, and you have to forgive if I'm not getting things out as accurately as possible, because I am reminiscing. My wife was taking so much more control, though, and when the money landed in her account, as what was normally the case, and the sort of unwritten agreement that she would transfer it back to me until we did something else, but she kept it in her bank, saying we can find something else, it doesn't need to go back into mine. And what do you mean, though, we can find something else? And I knew we were going to do that, but she should have transferred the money to me first, because that would have gave me comfort, and it would have made me understand that she knew what we were doing. But she told me not to worry about it. I felt very uneasy about that, not thinking anything negative about my wife at all, like it's going to be a problem, but feeling very uneasy that all that money sat in her bank, and perhaps not even knowing her as like I did. I don't know, but I did know her, didn't I? Not knowing her to the extent that I thought I did, perhaps, because otherwise she would have transferred the money back. But I didn't think anything could go wrong. I just had to accept it, which I did. I didn't want to fall out about it, because falling out about that could have meant an actual loss. So I just took it for what it was. As much as I didn't want to, I did. Now we're living in a place, and we start looking for another place. 6 months or so go by, probably a bit longer actually, spending time looking at lots of condos, and she's going to look at lots by herself too, and I'm allowing her to. And I wouldn't say at the time that I felt we were drifting apart, but I suppose we were. She was getting really big-headed about her so-called abilities, saying it was her that was making the money, and I'm going out meeting friends and not cheating her or anything like that. I wasn't that sort of person. I thought we were a team. We'd been together a long time and we knew each other, so if we spent a bit of time apart, it wasn't a problem. But it was her who said she's found a condo, and one that she'd looked together at, and told me that we could have a look with her if I wanted to. Again, by the riverside. Again, a great condo, and this one was 6 million or so. And it needed probably 1 million spending on it, so not too much in terms of what we spent on the other one, and we could perhaps sell it for 8. We decided to go for it. She had the money, went to buy it, went to the land office together, everything was going okay, and it went into her name, 6 million baht. Then she's calling workmen and, in the same room as me, and she said, okay, we can find the workman, and it'll start tomorrow. I need some money to pay for it. That was one of the moments that stunned me. What do you mean, you need some money? You had 8 million baht go into your bank from the other condo we sold. And she said, yes, I have something to tell you. I built a small house for my family in Nakhon Sawan, and I bought them a car, and I bought some gold. That was a shocking moment. I could remember blowing my top, shouting as loud as I'd ever shouted at anyone in my life. What do you mean? No problem, she said, we can make money. We've made money on these other condos, so we can make more money on this one, and it's not a problem. I just wanted to do nice for my family, she said. They're very happy. Of course they're going to be happy. This wasn't part of the plan, though. She's saying don't worry about it. And I calmed down over the next couple of days and ended up handing over some money for the renovation of this condo. I suppose I still wasn't understanding how far gone she was from me and how far gone we were from each other. We even went up to see the family. Hadn't been for a while, and yes, there's the house, there's the car. They're all smiley and happy. Thank you, thank you. They didn't agree to this, and I didn't agree at all, and I was furious. And I was apoplectic. I didn't show that, though. I was devastated at the same time as all of this, because that was 2 million baht that she'd just absconded, saying she wouldn't do it, saying it's not a problem, and that was the profit from basically all the condos that had gone. Plus, not to mention the condo we're living in is in her name. Now this other condo, which she'd already bought, that's in her name, and I had to hand over extra money, and it was renovated. Just, we had a really big problem with that one because it wasn't selling. It wasn't selling at all. I made the mistake that thinking, okay, it's not selling, perhaps we can buy another one, and then we'll have one and renovate one, and then we've got two for sale, and then we should be able to get some profit back. So I'm desperately wanting to regain that 2 million, and I think I was chasing that 2 million, even regards of the fact that it could cost me more. Now it's what I have to think about what I'm doing, because of course, over the next one that went into her name too, and it was renovated, and now I suppose if I think about it, I was invested into all these condos. We have ours, we have the other one, and probably another one. So 16 million baht was invested all in at condos, and it's all in her name. Yes, they're going to be for sale soon, and two of them are. And we'd agreed when one of them sells, that can go into her bank, and when the other one sells, that can go into my bank. That's what we'd already agreed to. It was okay because we had enough money to still live. It wasn't like we were running out of money, but it was a bit uneasy given the fact that they were all in her name. I had at this point still maybe 100 grand all in, plus those 3 condos. So, if we sold, it would have been a loss. I could have still arrived back at home with 300 grand because of the exchange rate differentials, and that's what I always thought about. You have to understand when you transfer in at 75 baht to the pound, and even if you lose a lot of money and you transfer back to your country at 50 or whatever it is, you're just making up for all the money you've lost. So that was everything I always clung on to as being, okay, things can't go too badly if I ever have to go back. But I was worrying because the money was in her account and the condos, were in her name. Around this time, though, I'm really starting to feel this disconnect between my wife. As I said, she's getting so big-headed, really full of herself. And while at the starting point it was something I could see and could notice and witness, and it was not necessarily enjoying it, but I just thought it was part and parcel of how life changes over time. But now I'm starting to, funnily enough, think that because this money's invested, she's kind of thinking it's hers, and she's thinking it's her doing and her ideas that allowed to make this extra money and do this, and she's sort of feeling someone she's not. I don't really know what it was. Starting to believe, though, that she was up to no good behind my back. That's the thing. I had this hunch that something was going wrong, that she was cheating on me. I really had this hunch, but I hadn't thought about that before, and it just came to me and I couldn't stop thinking about it. When you've got so much money invested into something, you can only think about negative things going wrong. I suppose that could have been what it was. Very difficult to think about the positives. And it was because of that I started to actually pay closer attention to things that she was doing. I never thought for a second when she went out by herself for the whole day, just do what you want. I did the same thing. I was never someone who would cheat on anybody, so it wasn't that I was worried about her doing that. But now I'm starting to think that all the opportunities when she's not with me, all the opportunities that she could be doing something that she shouldn't be doing and all of that, yet at the same time not wanting to let on that I was thinking about that, just in case it was true, because everything I had was invested. It was a couple of months after that second condo was for sale that I started to get really paranoid about the situation. I started to get upset thinking that something was going wrong, and I actually paid someone to tail her for a week. One of those Bangkok private investigators, one of those situations, they are real and they're very easy to find. And, I did it by the book. Experiences happen. And I paid this guy to tail her. And unfortunately, what I found out was my worst fears being proved right. She was romantically involved with this guy who turned out was someone from her village in Nakhon Sawan. But he wasn't a farmhand, he wasn't anything like that. He was actually a professional in Bangkok. He'd gone to university, he was very well educated. He was one of those stories of a Thai man gone good kind of thing, Thai man from the village. Not making a lot of money, but he was still making more than most people did. And I'm just throwing numbers in the wind here. I would guess he might have been on 40,000 a month, which at that time for someone in Thailand was great money from his background. I'm finding this out, and it was shocking because I have all this money investors. And she's actively cheating on me. What's her game? What's her plan? I actually confided in a friend of mine around this time because as luck would have it, or misfortune for him, something similar had happened to him. I remember him talking about he only lost one condo, which is still very bad for him, but I remember him talking about it. He was married for quite a while and they had this condo in her name, and she was cheating on him, and he ended up losing the condo, and he's talking about all these things he would have done if he knew at the time. I confided in him, and what he's telling me, you've got to come up with a plan, mate, otherwise you're going to lose everything. It couldn't have been more clear. If I didn't come up with a plan, I was going to lose everything. I didn't want to lose everything, did I? All I could think about doing was selling everything and getting my money in the bank and taking it out of the country. But how was I going to do that? That was the problem and the struggles of what I was facing. When we had an offer on one condo, it would have been about 1 million profit, and this was the one that was meant to go into my bank. I just held my breath wondering if she would be true to her word and put the money in my bank. Otherwise, I knew there and then that something was wrong. But she did. She actually did. Even though she was carrying on with this guy who I knew about, but I couldn't confront her about it because if I did, that would lay the whole game away and everything would go wrong. But true to her word, though, she put the money from that condo sale into my bank, and that was a huge sigh of relief because that was 8 million baht that went in. Then I kept coming back to this idea that I've been thinking about, and I raised it with her. One day, I'd noticed that there was a hotel for sale in Nakhon Sawan, in the town of all places, and I loved looking at things like that, and I spent so much time looking at different places for sale all around the country. And when I saw this one, I told her about it, and I asked her, do you know that there's a hotel for sale in Nakhon Sawan? I told her it sounded like it could be a great business. We need to have a company, though. We could own half of it each. You could own 51%, need another Thai person to own a tiny amount, and I could own the rest, and we could invest in this hotel, and we could make a lot of money. We ended up going for a look at this place. It wasn't a huge hotel, but it was something that, with a bit of work, it could be an 800 baht a night kind of place. Enough rooms to make, I worked out, 200,000 baht a month. Not that that's something I was interested in. Luckily, though, she was really enthused about the idea, saying it was a fantastic idea. She said she wanted to do this, and she started to imagine herself being this big businesswoman, this huge kind of big cheese in the village because it was only a 20-minute drive away from this hotel. We kept coming back to the idea, and it was for sale, and we kept going to look at it again a few times. And it was the plan, though. I thought, when we had the money from the sales, we could buy this hotel. What we would need to do, what we're going to need to do is sell the other condos. One of them was for sale, but we're going to need to sell the condo that we're living in as well. And then we can buy that hotel in Nakhon Sawan. They didn't really have any condos for sale up there, so we would probably buy a house. I mean, I told her I would buy a house. And I believe they might have condos there today, but again, that's not important. But she's saying that she'd agreed to do this. And we ended up doing that. Over the course of about another year, we slightly reduced the price on the condo that was for sale and listed the one that we had living in for sale as well. And eventually we sold them. That hotel hadn't sold yet, and we kept telling them we were interested and kept telling them we wanted it. And luckily it hadn't sold. And she had most of the money in her bank. I had the money from the condo that she put in and the money that I still saved, and that was it. She's still carrying on behind my back, probably plotting and planning about ways to take this over. And of course she knew that I wouldn't have just handed her the money, and she knew that wasn't going to happen. So we approached a lawyer, the one that I'd always used. I told him of my predicament and situation and just hoped he would, be true to his word and not tell her anything. And the idea was we would form a company. She can have 51%, 1% would go to another one of her family members, and the rest would go to me. Then we can pool the money together into the business bank, then we can use that to transfer from the business or pay by cheque for the hotel, and that seemed to be the best, most obvious situation about how it would work. This had gone on for a while now, and I'm starting in a really bad way to feel mentally. I'm drinking to cope with the stress and the pressure of it. I'm struggling to understand, what's going on here and if this is going to work. And she saw that basically the way to do it, though, and it seemed to be the best way we could do it, and the only way we could do it. And it was like, if this could be, then I could find a way out. She said, though, why can't we transfer from the personal accounts? And, she didn't even say that. It was just the answer I was going to give to her along the lines of, if we transfer from the personal account, it's not right. It has to come from the company because it's going into the company's name. So I had answers for things that she didn't even ask anyway. So we both went to the bank, got that set up, and it was set up in a way that both directors could sign to take the money out. I think it was her plan probably to take the money out by herself, and it was my plan to take the money out by myself. Not to do this hotel deal because I wanted to get my money back. And I pulled the trigger first, transferred the money in that I needed to pay for the hotel, and that was now sitting in the company. And she transferred it in for the rest, and it was going to be transferred for the hotel in the next couple of days. We had to just kind of, once the money was there, we had to draw up the contract, which we had to do, and we needed the main contracts and things. It was, quite a difficult situation. It was just something that the lawyer had done that I needed to have done. And the moment when I actually went to the bank without her to transfer it all out of the business into my personal account, that was what I was hoping and looking forward to do the most and very nervous to do because this was it. By this point, I'd already got the transaction information that I'd sent the money into Thailand before originally, so I could send it out again. I'd already got this ready. And when the money was on its way out of Thailand, when I'd actually made the transfer out, I kind of salvaged the situation, and it was a fantastic moment. Because what landed in my account in the UK was about 370 grand. 370 grand landed in my account. Considering I transferred in 300 grand right in the early stages of my time there, and I'd made a bit of profit, that was remarkable. I didn't run, I didn't do anything. I went to see her and I said, I'm sorry, I've changed my mind and I've transferred the money out of the country. I told her I'm doing it because you've been cheating on me, and she blew her top. Then how do you do this to me? I'm not cheating on you. I knew all about it though. I even had a picture that the guy who tailed her had snapped. Who's this? He's just a friend. Really, just a friend? Yes, he's just a friend. I don't believe you. So she said, I will go to the police. I do this, I do that. Do it then. Do what you want. It was my money. I transferred it out. Do what you want. She storms out and I'm thinking she can't do anything about it. It's just maybe better for me to leave anyway. By this point, we were just living in a small hotel, just about to go up and get this huge hotel in Nakhon Sawan and live there. And it was just like a temporary thing, and wondering that she was hoping to get this extracted out of me according to her, but I wasn't going to let that happen. But I got to the point where I thought I'd better leave, and I made the decision to actually return home. Hadn't been for a long time, and I didn't really recognise it, but I was able to take stock of the situation, and I just felt, what a huge adventure it was in a way. That's the right thing to say. I felt like I had won. Not only had I beaten her and made sure I didn't lose any money, I'd actually made money in terms of pounds by being in Thailand for the time I'd been there because of the exchange rate differentials, and that was quite a remarkable thing to happen. I contemplated life for a few years from there, and I actually moved to Sri Lanka. I went for a visit and just fell in love with the country, and I've remained there since. It's been a difficult road, ups and downs and lots of turmoil here and there, but I'm pretty happy with the decision I made, and I do a lot of travelling around because I invested that money, and it's worth now quite a lot. That's where I suppose I didn't get things wrong. Okay, I had a very close call to nearly losing everything in Thailand, but I didn't have my money, and I didn't have it to spend when it was in that situation, but I made sure I did, and I managed to win. Now I have my money and it's able to grow, and I made a few lucky investments and good investments, just I suppose they were lucky too, and that's allowed me to live a great life from then. That's my Thailand story. It was fun while it lasted, it was exciting, it was nerve-wracking, and I had a couple of good years of sheer panic and terror before I managed to extricate myself from the situation, because it could have gone wrong. It's only thinking outside the box that I believe made it go right. I always feel good when I'm hearing other guys' stories about how they've managed to salvage their situation. You have to remember, or at least I believe, that on the most part, you are generally more intelligent than the woman that you'll meet because of just the law of averages. So you shouldn't be outsmarted by someone from Thailand, and I wasn't. She thought she was going to outsmart me. She didn't. She thought she was a big businesswoman. She wasn't. I don't know how she changed like that. Or was it that she started making money out of the condo and noticed that she thought she was bigger than she was, and that's when I noticed the huge shift in her. That was probably why she hooked up with that guy, because she thought she was on the same level playing field as him, both mentally, and she wasn't on the same page as him at all. She was believing she was, using my money to believe that she was, this big businesswoman that she wasn't, and ultimately I managed to make sure that she didn't take from me what was mine. I live a great life now, luckily. Thailand was an amazing country, and I suppose I would be there if I could be. From what you've said, mate, and what other people say, and I follow your videos all the time, I love your other channel, I really do. From what you've said, and what other people say, I don't think I'd fit in Thailand anymore. I'm too old school, I'm too how Thailand was, and I'm happy where I am. I will be until I'm not. Good luck in Thailand. Things don't have to go wrong as long as you make sure that you're prepared for them going wrong. Know that they can go wrong, and do everything you can to prevent that. So that you're not one of the statistics. Be one of the right statistics, even though there are so few of them in comparison to the ones where everything goes wrong for. So that's my advice.